The tightest part of your body isn't always the part that needs stretching. Sometimes it's working overtime because something else isn't working well. Maybe it's your neck, your shoulders, your hips, hamstrings, calves. So naturally, the inclination is to start stretching. Maybe it feels better for a little while. Maybe it doesn't change much at all. Or maybe you find yourself stretching the exact same spot day after day, week after week, wondering why it never seems to stay better. If you've experienced that, you are certainly not alone. If you've been stretching your tight hamstrings or your tight shoulders for weeks or even months, and the relief never seems to last, this one's for you. And before we go any further, I want you to know something. You're not doing anything wrong. You're simply working with the information that you've been given. So today, I'd like to introduce you to an idea that completely changed the way I think about stretching. Because sometimes stretching is exactly what your body needs, but sometimes it's not. Hi, I'm Heather, and welcome back to our Body Literacy series. If you've been following along, we've been learning about how to understand the messages our bodies are sending us instead of simply reacting to symptoms. Today, we're talking about one of the biggest assumptions many of us have been taught. If something feels tight, stretch it. It's simple. It seems logical, and sometimes it's absolutely the right thing to do. But after more than 20 years of teaching movement, I've learned that tightness doesn't always mean a muscle needs more length. Sometimes it's trying to tell us something much more important. One of the key elements in beginning to understand why a muscle feels tight is by learning about something called compensation. One of the things that I really love most about the human body is how adaptable it is. Your body is constantly trying to help you accomplish whatever task it is that you're asking it to do. It wants you to reach up and grab a jar from the top shelf. It wants you to load the dishwasher, to turn and back out of a parking space, to carry laundry baskets up the stairs, to kneel down and pull weeds, or maybe chase a tennis ball that you probably shouldn't have gone for. It doesn't wake up in the morning trying to make life difficult. It's always trying to find the most efficient way to get the job done using the resources that it has available. And sometimes that means asking one muscle to do a little more because another area isn't contributing the way that it could. When that happens, the hardworking muscle often begins to feel tight. Not necessarily because it's short, but because it's been working overtime. So let's just imagine for a moment that you've just spent the afternoon moving furniture around a room, trying 3 different arrangements before it finally feels right. By the time you're done, your hands are tired, your forearms are tired, your shoulders, they might be tired too. Would we say those muscles are tired because they're too short? Probably not. They're tired because they've been working hard. Our bodies often respond the same way during movement. When one area isn't doing its share, another area quietly steps in to help. That's compensation. And compensation isn't bad. In fact, it's one of the things that makes our bodies so amazing. It allows us to keep moving, but over time, those compensations can begin asking for our attention. So let's try a really common example. How many people do you see walking around rubbing the tops of their shoulders all day? Maybe you've even caught yourself doing it. Those muscles feel tight, so you stretch them. You massage them, roll them. Maybe it helps for a little while, but then the tightness comes right back. Why? Well, what if those muscles aren't actually the problem? What if they're simply working a little bit harder than they should because your shoulder blades aren't moving well, or because other muscles aren't contributing as efficiently as they could? Imagine a coworker who quietly picks up the slack every time someone else calls out sick. They answer the emails, they cover the phone calls, they smooth everything over. Eventually, that person is gonna run out of steam. That doesn't necessarily mean that they need a vacation. It might mean the workload just needs to be shared a little bit differently. Our muscles often work the same way. A muscle that's working really hard isn't always asking for more length. Sometimes it's asking for help. And honestly, I think that's a much kinder way to think about our bodies. More often than not, they're not trying to make life harder. They're simply doing the very best that they can with the movement options they have available. Now let's take a look at another really common example, your hamstrings. So, after nearly 22 years of teaching yoga and functional movement, I've seen this pattern over and over again. Someone comes into class and tells me, my hamstrings are always tight. So I ask, what have you been doing for them? And almost every time, without fail, the answer is, I stretch them. Sometimes that helps. But I've also watched many students, especially those whose movement practice has emphasized stretching far more than strengthening, discover what they were actually missing wasn't another hamstring stretch. It was strength. That's one of the reasons I believe healthy movement practices includes both mobility and strength. People stretch their hamstrings all the time. Sometimes that's exactly what they need, but not always. If your hips aren't moving well or your pelvis isn't contributing efficiently, your hamstrings may spend the day helping to stabilize your body. Again, they've been working, so they feel tight. But if we only stretch them without understanding why they're working so hard, we may find temporary relief, but the reason they became tight in the first place, that really hasn't changed. Now, I'd like to be really clear here. I stretch. I teach stretching. I think stretching can be incredibly valuable. It can improve mobility, reduce stiffness, help us feel wonderful. The point isn't to stop stretching. The point is to stop assuming stretching is always the answer. Because sometimes what your body really needs isn't more flexibility. Sometimes it needs better movement options, better support, better coordination, better strength. Sometimes it simply needs another part of your body to start doing its share. The goal isn't to stop doing things to your body. The goal is to start choosing the thing your body actually needs. One of my favorite questions that I ask myself and my students is this: why is this muscle working so hard? That one question, it changes everything. Instead of immediately trying to force the muscle to relax, we become curious. We begin looking at a bigger picture. We stop chasing symptoms and we start understanding patterns. That's what body literacy is all about. Learning to spot compensation before it becomes a long-term pattern, instead of simply chasing symptoms. Learning to understand your body instead of constantly feeling like you're fighting against it. So here's something I'd like you to take away with you today. The next time something feels tight, before you immediately stretch it, just pause for a moment and ask yourself, has this area been tight for a long time? Does it always seem to come back? Does another part of my body feel stiff or difficult to move? Could this muscle simply be working harder than it was designed to? You may still decide to stretch, and that's perfectly wonderful. But now you're making that decision from a place of curiosity instead of habit. Our bodies are incredibly intelligent. They're always adapting. They're always trying to help us accomplish the task in front of us. The more we understand those adaptations, the better decisions we can make about how we move. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves. Not just more movement, but a better understanding of the incredible body we're living in every single day. Next time, we'll build on today's conversation by exploring another question I hear all the time. How do you know if a muscle is actually tight or if it's really weak? Because those two things can feel surprisingly similar. So if you enjoyed today's video, I'd love to have you subscribe and continue your body literacy journey with me. Until next time, keep moving, stay curious, and take really good care of yourself.